Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a bonus edition of Afterthoughts. Today we're diving into a topic that's equal parts fascinating, frustrating, and, if I'm honest, just completely infuriating, which is the strange but very real willingness of MAGA loyalists to make personal sacrifices, just not for the reasons you might expect. Now, you may have seen the headlines recently dogging on Trump for suggesting that American kids might need to settle for $3 instead of 30. Predictably, some people thought that would be the tipping point. Aha! They'll never stand for this. But the awesome folks over at the Wonket independent news site shared a recent article titled, "Trumpists are a lot happier to put up with economic sacrifice than we give them credit for." I'll put a link to the article in the show notes. It's definitely worth reading in its entirety. But basically, assuming that die-hard MAGA folks won't be willing to make personal sacrifices misunderstands something fundamental. MAGA folks will sacrifice. They're already sacrificing in a lot of ways. The trick is that Trump asking them to sacrifice seems to work when it reinforces their identity or sticks it to the people who they fear and hate. In other words, many of them really are happy to make personal sacrifices for their orange king. And here's where things get deeply familiar. If this all sounds eerily like certain religious dynamics, that's because it is. We're not just talking about politics here. We're talking about a cultural mindset that's just steeped in the dangerous theology of redemptive suffering, right? The value of suffering for the sake of suffering. You know, the belief that pain now means reward later. That obedience in the face of injustice is a virtue, and that faithfulness is proven by how much you're willing to endure without question. And let's be real, that's not exclusive to MAGA by any means. In fact, that's Christianity 101. So today we're asking the hard question: how the fuck did we get here where people will gladly cut off their own nose if they think it means someone else will bleed even more? And more importantly, what can we do about it? All right, enough with the preamble. Let's get into this. Let's start with the basics. Sacrifice equals commitment. That's not just basic political psychology. It's religion, cults, corporate loyalty programs, you name it. If someone gives up something meaningful for a cause, they don't just believe in it anymore. They need to believe in it more, just to make sense of what they've already given up. It's how humans are wired. Nobody wants to feel like they've suffered for nothing, so they're willing to double down. This is why religions, and yes, cults too, almost always demand some form of sacrifice. Whether it's money, time, health, relationships, or in extreme cases, your own well-being, sacrifice makes people feel invested. It makes them belong. You're not just in the group because you said the words, you proved it by what you gave up. Religious organizations know this. They've known it for thousands of years. And here's the kicker. When that sacrifice hurts, it's almost always reframed as a badge of honor. Sure, I'm struggling to pay rent, but it's worth it for the cause. I know this looks bad now, but it means I'm one of the faithful few. That's the story being told. The pain becomes the proof. The worse things get, the more righteous they feel. And it can end up being loyalty by attrition because those who bail out, those who give up, make those who remain feel even more special. Like I said, their willingness to continue enduring the pain or hardship while others give up becomes proof of their commitment to their misguided cause. Now here's where it gets really wild. On the one hand, die-hard MAGA folks want things to be better for their people, whoever that happens to be in their twisted little minds. But those MAGA followers aren't rejecting personal sacrifice. They're embracing it. But they're doing it in a way that's twisted around to serve spite, not solidarity. As the article from Wonkat points out, they'll say no to universal health care, knowing full well they'd benefit from it, just because they don't want someone else, like an undocumented immigrant or a poor black family, to get it for free. They'll accept rising prices and cuts to programs they rely on because they've been convinced that hurting everyone is somehow better than helping people they've been taught to resent. It's sacrifice weaponized. And the target? Sometimes themselves. Because if it means Trump is winning, if it means sticking it to the libs, if it means punishing the people they've been told are undeserving, then hey, losing their own safety net, that's just collateral damage. It's not rational at all, but it is deeply human. Because when pain is linked to identity, and that identity is wrapped up in a cause or an orange man, logic gets tossed out the window. You don't measure the sacrifice. You wear it like a uniform. And that's what we're dealing with. Not apathy, not laziness, but people who have been trained religiously, culturally, psychologically, trained to see sacrifice as a test of devotion. And they're passing it with flying colors, even if it kills them. All right, so let's talk about the holy sacrament of spite. Because if the Wonkat article that inspired this episode got anything dead on, it's this. MAGA sacrifice isn't really about policy. It's about pain, but specifically about making someone else feel it more than you do. This isn't, I'll go without so my kids have a better future. This is more like, I'll go without as long as that black family or that queer couple or that immigrant goes without even harder. And that's not political strategy. If anything, that's spiritual rot. It's resentment baptized and fed communion. And here's where things get uncomfortably familiar. This posture, this I'll suffer if it hurts you more mindset, didn't come out of nowhere. It's been carefully cultivated over centuries through religious martyrdom stories. How many sermons have been preached about saints who joyfully suffered, about the glory of being persecuted for righteousness' sake, about taking up your cross as a sign that you're better than those who didn't? Let's be honest, a lot of Christians have been trained to see suffering as proof that they're holy, and by extension, they're morally superior. So when Trump stands up and says, you might have to live with less, but it'll be worth it, for them, it lands like a beatitude. Because now their suffering is sanctified. Their empty wallet is a trophy. Their loss becomes proof of their loyalty. And when you mix that sort of theology with politics, you get something really, really dangerous, because spite feels like power, especially when you feel powerless. If you can't fix your life, at least you can make sure someone else's life doesn't get better either. That ends up being an emotional high for many of these people. That's what makes any sacrifice worth it. So no, they're not changing their minds because groceries got more expensive. If anything, that just adds to their credibility in their own eyes. They're suffering for the cause, and that makes them feel righteous, even if the cause is built on lies, cruelty, and some sort of weird projection. It's a twisted kind of spirituality, but it is spiritual. It tells them you're a good person because you're enduring this. And it tells them you're better than those other people because at least you're not asking for a handout. It's martyrdom with a middle finger, and it's being sold to millions of people as some sort of moral virtue. But here's the deal. Orange Julius Caesar and his MAGA sycophants didn't invent this dynamic. It's just the latest remix of a very old tune. Because long before Trump, religion, especially American-style Christianity, was laying the groundwork for this kind of authoritarian loyalty. Let's connect the dots. You grow up being told that obedience is a virtue, being told that questioning authority is sinful, told that suffering means you're doing something right, and that if you just hang in there long enough, be a good little sheep, God will reward you someday, somehow, probably after you're dead. I mean, honestly, this whole thing is the ultimate delayed gratification scheme. Now throw in the idea that those who don't suffer like you do, those who dare to question, who dare to live differently, who dare to want better for themselves and others, well, they're the enemy. They're sinners. They're of the world. Or, in MAGA terms, they're elites, or the woke mob, or just plain un-American. So when Trump rolls up like some golden calf in a red tie, promising that your loyalty will be rewarded and your enemies will be punished, guess what? It feels familiar. The man literally tells people, only I can fix it. And instead of panicking, they swoon. Because it sounds an awful lot like, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And yeah, that's not an accident. And televangelists, they've been running this grift for decades. Send me your money now and God will bless you later. Trump just rebranded it. Vote for me now, suffer through my chaos, and I'll make America great again, eventually. Spoiler alert, the check's not in the mail. The only gains are going to him and his cronies, certainly not to the bulk of MAGA Nation. But that doesn't matter to the MAGA faithful, because the promise isn't really about policy or politics. It's about domination. It's about wanting the people you hate, wanting them to lose, and lose hard. This isn't about faith in a higher power. This is about faith in eventual payback. A cosmic scoreboard where your team wins because you were obedient enough, patriotic enough, you were Christian nationalist enough. And if you suffered along the way, even better. That just proves you were on the right side. So yeah, religion hasn't just made space for authoritarianism, it trained people for it. Conditioned them to equate suffering with holiness, conditioned them to trust charismatic leaders over their own eyes and ears, conditioned them to believe that justice equals watching the other guy burn. It's not spirituality. It's supremacy with a stained glass filter. Okay, so now that you're totally depressed and demoralized, let me shift directions. I've dogged on religious martyrdom stories, authoritarian cosplay, and MAGA cosplay as martyrdom, so let's talk about where we go from here. Because sacrifice isn't inherently bad. It's just been hijacked. It's been weaponized. The idea of personal sacrifice has been dipped in spite sauce and served cold. But what if we took the idea of sacrifice and regrounded it in values rather than vengeance? What if giving something up wasn't about proving we're more righteous or making sure someone else suffers more? What if it's about lifting each other up? What if it's about making the world a little more fair, a little more kind, and hopefully a little more sustainable? What I'm talking about is mutual sacrifice. Not the culty kind where one dude gets rich and everyone else eats expired canned beans. I mean the kind where we all give up a little bit of convenience or privilege so that everyone has enough. Where those with more contribute more. Not because they're being punished, but because that's what community means. That's how grown-ups should behave in a civilized society. Imagine this. People voluntarily paying a little more in taxes so we can all have health care. People giving up a little square footage so more people can afford housing. People putting in time to help their neighbors instead of just filming their struggles for clicks. That's the kind of sacrifice that makes society stronger. Not just for our side, but for everybody. We need a total reframing of both civic life and spiritual life. Because sacrifice that serves justice is beautiful. It's powerful. But sacrifice that justifies cruelty, that's not noble. That's just hatred disguised with a dollar store halo. So if we want to offer the world something better than the authoritarian promise of pain and payback, it starts here. Sacrifice should serve love, not ego. It should serve justice, not dominance. And if we can agree on that, then maybe, just maybe, we can finally start rebuilding something worth believing in. I could talk for hours about this, but let me try to wrap up my thoughts for now. MAGA loyalty, it's not just political. It's emotional, it's psychological, and for many people, it's basically spiritual. It's wrapped in identity, nostalgia, resentment, and this almost sacred sense of self-sacrifice, but only if the right people are suffering. And yeah, that's a fucking mess. But it's not a completely unbreakable cycle. People can change. Some won't, but most can. But not because we dunk on them in the comment sections, right? Change starts small. It starts one conversation, one connection, one moment of doubt that makes them pause. It starts with that. So start where you are. If you've got someone in your life who's up to their eyeballs in this crazy shit, just talk to them. Ask real questions. Invite reflection. And when the opportunity comes, help them name the cruelty they've been conditioned to cheer for. Because once someone says it out loud, yeah, I guess I am okay with others suffering as long as I get what I want. Yeah, once they say that out loud, that can plant a seed. That can even start to crack the armor. Because here's the truth. The world doesn't need more martyrs for cruelty. We've got enough people proving their loyalty by how much pain they'll endure or inflict on others in the name of selfish, horrible causes. What the world really needs is more people willing to build something better together. That's it. That's the call. Not to suffer more, but to love better. All right, thanks for joining me for this bonus edition of Afterthoughts. If you want to keep up on everything I'm doing, please head over to thecodaproject.com and subscribe to my newsletter. You'll get notifications whenever I publish anything, and I'll also keep you updated on the weekly live streams of mythologizing the Bible. Also, if you subscribe for free over at thecodaproject.com, you'll start receiving my weekly resource called The Weekly Compass. This is a brief, once-a-week guide on a single core value. Think of it as a mini lesson plan for personal growth. It's perfect for families, students, and adults because I include discussion questions designed for each age group. Each weekly issue centers on a short reflection about the week's value, followed by discussion questions that are tailored for different age groups, from kids to college students to adults, and then a simple take action step, like a small challenge or weekly exercise you can do to put that value into practice. Especially for families, it's designed to be an easy way to ensure that at least once a week you're making time to talk about morality, ethics, and core values. So if you're interested, go subscribe for free at thecodaproject.com. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep seeking the truth.